While Arsenal are making bids for third choice goalkeepers and trying to get Ricardo Calafiori over the line, the midfield position is not being neglected, or at least that's according to reports, because Arsenal have been linked with Crystal Palace's Eberechi Eze and Real Sociedad's Mikel Merino. Both different profiles, though, and in this video we want to discuss why both bring different strengths but have similarities as well that make them both Arteta players. Quite frankly, are both players that we could want or need. Let's go through both their player profiles and then discuss their strengths and their weaknesses. I want to start with Eberechi Eze, the 26-year-old who is a central midfielder, attacking midfielder and left winger. I have been a bit generous putting central midfield in there. I know under Patrick Vieira he did at times play in central areas and part of the midfield three, but really I think he's a player that does his best work in the front three or in the 10. He's 26 years old, he's 5'8", right-footed, he's English. Now, the only reason I put the nationality, I mean, it's just interesting for you to know, it doesn't really matter too much, but when it comes to homegrown players, is that something Arsenal might be keeping an eye on? You never know, every now and again that gets thrown around in reports. Of course, Crystal Palace's Eze is homegrown. He's played for 3 pro clubs, of course, QPR in there, 260 senior appearances. He has a £60 million release clause, which I think makes it quite tempting and potentially an easier deal to do, although reports are saying that Palace would want at least 50 million of it up front, and he's got a contract expiry in 2027, so there's nothing we can really play on there. Why do I mention that? Because when it comes to Mikel Merino, there's a little bit more encouragement there. Let's go to his player profile. He is honestly the out-and-out number 8, because he can play as a defensive midfielder, he can play as an attacking midfielder, but he really is a central midfielder. He can contribute in all areas of the pitch, but you want him centrally facilitating everything. He's 28 years old, so got 2 more years experience on not Mikel Merino, he is Mikel Merino, on Eberechi Eze. He's 6'2", left-footed, and he's Spanish, playing for 4 pro clubs, including Newcastle. He had a stint under Rafa Benitez at Newcastle, you might remember. He's got 343 senior appearances under his belt with a £52 million release clause. Now you're probably all thinking, okay, so is that what we're going to have to pay to get him? Potentially not, because as you can see, his contract expires in 2025. So that release clause, 52 million, is probably more than Arsenal would want to go anywhere near if you're to bring him in. But with only 1 year left on his contract, he's actually into his final, 11, 10 months or whatever it is. I think there's a good chance actually that Arsenal could get him for significantly less. If I'm to throw out a random figure, maybe 25 to 35 million. I'd be amazed if we had to go anywhere near that 52 million. But that prediction, or the 25 to 35, was just a prediction, a considered guess, if you will. Now, with all these videos, when we do in focuses, we kind of look deep into the FB ref data, we look at, their history, we look at quite a lot of things. You've seen the videos before. We're not going to do that, actually. I think if one progresses, then we will obviously do a much deeper dive on those players. But it hasn't stopped me doing the research and getting to know their strengths and weaknesses and seeing where the two compare. Because that's going to be the focus of this video, is looking at why they actually present very, very different options for Arsenal and Arteta. And actually, when I asked the question on socials, would you rather Eze or Mikel Merino? And I will give you the answer to that, because I did do a poll on Twitter to get everyone's thoughts. A lot of people were still commenting, we need both. It's not either or, they're different players and we would like both. But I don't think Arsenal will be able to do both. And in this, I'm going to explain why. Let's touch on the strengths and weaknesses of both players. Now with Eze and Merino, this actually isn't a strength or weakness thing, it's just more where they differ. Eze, much more an attacking midfielder, as we mentioned. Merino, a central midfielder, potentially defensive midfielder, be an out-and-out 8, whereas Eze is a 10/wide, flary, creative player. Now, I've gone into the next, the next attribute, the next strength, and that is dribbling, and I give that to Eze. Now, I was toying with putting it under both, but when we talk about dribbling, I think we mean the ability to carry, drive up the pitch, beat players, and having ball control in tight areas that can take on 2-3 players and get you out of tight spaces, and, dribbling that excites, dribbling that you associate with the word flair. And I've given that to Eze. Now, look, Merino, he can dribble, he can carry, he can in tight spaces drive with the ball. He's capable of doing that, which is why I nearly put them in the both category. But I think Eze just stands head and shoulders in terms of dribbling in the way that what you associate with the word dribbling. Eze really feels a master of it. Now let me just say, with all these that you're seeing on screen, they are a mixture of the eye test, so me just watching tape, comps, videos, whatever it might be, having watched them over a few years because I know both these players, but it's also FB ref data, it's also other stats and performance-based stats compared to other midfielders in top 5 leagues to see how they compare for some of these attributes and stats as well. So it's not just a willy-nilly, let's just throw these attributes at each one. there's some research and data behind all these. So dribbling, I give to Eze. But then I think there's three things that both of them are very good at. They're both very good passers of a ball. I don't think either of them lack an ability to play a wide range of passes. I don't think any of them lack the ability to be quite accurate, quite dependable with their passing. Eze, you're probably looking at him as a passer in terms of making things happen in the final third. Merino, his passing is, I think, tempo dictating as well. First touch, both brilliant. Creativity, both brilliant. Now, I think Eze, again, he's got that through ball, that flair in the final third. Merino, I think, has the ability to do that. He's got a good cross on him, and his passing can unlock defences as well. But Eze feels like the one that you maybe would depend on to do a little bit more in a low block. Creativity, first touch, passing. I think both of them excel in those areas. Then I've got switches, which is a type of passing. The reason I get that in is because I think it shows off Merino slightly more of an 8. Now, to be fair, when I looked at the Epi-Ref data, there wasn't a lot in it. Both ranked fairly similarly. But when it came to switches in terms of what I was seeing on comps and videos and tape, Merino seemed to have a little bit more. And again, that makes sense. When you're playing a deeper position, a little bit more time to spray those passes left and right. Something that I think Arsenal thought they were adding that in Declan Rice. And maybe us actually as fans thought we were adding that in Declan Rice. But to be fair, he's just barely been asked to sort of do that on the ball. I don't think Declan Rice has been one to switch possession too much in an Arsenal shirt. He's obviously capable of doing it, but yeah, something that Merino has, I think, over Eze. Let's move down the list to other things. Through balls, again, I give it to both of them, like I did with passing. I think both of them are capable of doing that. You probably see a little bit more of it from Eze, but Merino certainly has the ability to play that kind of pass. And then we go into ball striking. Now, what do we mean by that? Because that could just mean shooting, that could mean finishing. I think ball striking is a fancy word that's sort of done the rounds on socials recently. I think what we mean is the ability to consistently hit the ball, strike the ball towards goal in the manner of a shot, in the manner of a whipped cross into the box, whatever it is, in a really quick, efficient, accurate way. You are dependable in that. I think most players that get to that level are capable of hitting a wonder strike into the top corner. Can you do it in pressurised situations? Can you do it in tight spaces? Can you do it when the team's not playing well? Can you do it when you're not having a very good game? And I just thought Eze, more than anything, came up trumps when it came to that. Eze, I watched back some of his goals from this last season gone, and I actually had to stop for a second and be like, are these all from this last campaign? Or are these all his goals ever for Palace? Because, oh my word, the goal catalogue is phenomenal. He's an incredible ball striker. He does it from free kicks. He does it with his right foot. He does it with his left foot. Goals from outside the box. He is a player that makes things happen. And if we do an in-focus on Eberechi Eze, if this stuff picks up, we will go into detail and show you the kind of goals and the areas he's scoring them from. Because, my word, this is a guy, what we've been saying about Arsenal, that City have. A Foden, a De Bruyne, who can put the ball in the top corner out of nothing, who can make something happen out of nothing. I think we need Eze for something like that. And where I'm torn between Merino and Eze really does have that more than Merino. And while Merino might add a better balance, that is something about Eze I love. But more on that at the end of the video as I give my conclusion. I've got here box crashing as well. I just mean when the ball is out wide, who's making that run to the box, who's getting on the edge of the area. We've seen very recent goals from both. Eze at Anfield, cut back to the edge of the area, strokes into the back of the net, 1-0 Palace, they end up winning that game. And then you had Merino, winning the game for Spain against Germany in the stadium, 33 years after his dad scored or something, which is an incredible stat there. Scoring a great header and doing the kind of thing Granit Xhaka was doing at times in his final season at Arsenal. Box crashing, I think they both have it. Now, duels, you would think as an 8 that probably goes towards Mikel Merino more than Eze, but actually when it comes to duels, both rank very highly on FB-Ref data. And again, look at the tape in the comps, Eze has been able to create transition, win the ball up the pitch. If you look at his FB-Ref data as well, the tackles in the attacking third and middle third are pretty encouraging. Once again, Arteta wants duel winners. He's got 2 to choose from here. Aerial duels goes to the 6'2" Mikel Merino. He is very dependable in the air. Recoveries and strength I give to both of them. I think both of them are strong. I don't think either are super muscular, bulky players, but they both use, their size very, very well. Now, Merino is 6'2" to Eze's 5'8", but they are both very strong on the ball and very good in the duel, and they show that strength. In terms of recoveries, both very good at making those recoveries, winning ball back for their teams. Now, another one for Eze. Eze isn't lightning quick, but he certainly has pace over Merino. If you're looking to add a player that can do something a little bit more direct in terms of ball carrying the final third, carrying with the ball and without, Eze is your guy. Height, as we've mentioned with aerial duels, comes to Merino. Versatility, I think it's absolutely a strength for Eze here. Now, when it comes to Eze and his strength, his versatility, I think I think that is a major strength of his, that if you're signing him, you're getting a potential third 8, so you can go Ødegaard, Rice, Eze. You've got a potential 10 if you want to drop Ødegaard deeper and build up. But you've also got him on the left, who can play out on the touchline because he's got the skill and enough pace to do it, but you can also tuck inside the way Smith Rowe is doing if you want to get an overlapper on that side in the way Ben White is on the right to Saka, and Calafiori, we've been pointing out in the previous In Focus, might have the ability to do that too. So I think the versatility is a massive, massive strength for Eze. I think Merino, while you could play him as a 6, you could play him as the more creative of the midfielders. He's really an 8 out and out. Take-ons, again, I give to Eze. For everything we mentioned when it comes to dribbling and all that, take-ons, I think the willingness to always run at players, I give that to him. Some of these I'm just realising maybe slightly overlap, but you get my point. When it comes to experience, I give that to Merino. You know, this guy is only 2 years older, but he's played Champions League football. He's played in multiple countries. That 2 years matters. He's been more of a regular international level. I think Merino certainly, those extra 100 appearances at senior football level, I think experience has to go. For Merino, I think got underlapping. You might go, that's a really weird random thing to have. That's just like one thing you do in a football match. And you're right. I just felt that watching the way Merino was regularly underlapping, getting crosses into the box, that's something that Granit Xhaka did a lot. And actually there's a lot of similarities to their game. So Merino would add that to the team, where Eze could, but maybe not quite as comfortably unless you put him on the right to do that, and you're maybe tweaking the dynamics with Ødegaard. And then crossing, both very good crosses. That kind of falls into the ball striking thing. Both can whip a ball into the box. So a lot there. I'd love to know what you all think of the strengths and weaknesses of both players. Let me know in the comment section below. This is again based off watching tape, looking at some of the data, how I would differentiate their strengths. That's not to say that just because something is a strength of Eze's that Merino can't do it, and vice versa. You know, these are very complete options who I think would add a lot to Arsenal, but in very, very different ways. And that's what I want to discuss in this, because Eze feels to me, if we go to the tactical pad in a sec, Eze feels to me like a player who would be doing what I think Arteta might have wanted Smith Rowe to have been doing all these years in an Arsenal shirt. Now, that might feel a bit harsh because we don't know what's happening with Smith Rowe. He wants to fight for his place in the team, and Arteta might oblige, he might allow him to do that and give him another year. But it just feels like we've moved beyond Smith Rowe a little bit, and that the next best thing is a move for him. Fulham, of course, we know very interested. Robbie's covered all that on Transfer Daily. But if I just take you to the tactical pad for a second, what we've got here, and I discussed this on another video recently, is the 11 that actually finished the game against Everton on the final day of the season, and how they shaped up with Timber and Zinchenko tucking in to get Smith Rowe in that pocket with Ødegaard. And I think if we're to sign Eze, you're going to be doing a very, very similar thing. So if we just go across and bring the two players in, so we've got Eze and we've got Merino. Let's just put them there for a second. If we take Smith Rowe out, we put Eze in there. There we go. That is where I think Eze would be playing. I think Eze would be playing in that pocket to, combine with Jesus or Martinelli out wide or Trossard out wide or whatever. The question you've got here, though, is when Arsenal drop into a shape, how does it look pressing off the ball with Eze slotting in as that 6? Now, you could do, a tighter 3-man press like that. You could have a more sturdy midfield with Jesus and Martinelli, or your two wide players tucking in to press together. You could do that, but I'm just not sure that Arteta is going to move away from the 4-4-2 pressing system that's actually worked really well for Arsenal for a good few years now. So that's my big question with Eze. Where there are other strengths is that he can play out wide as well. He can play in that 10 as we've mentioned. You might have Arsenal even shaping up like this at times. You may even have Ødegaard drifting to the left and Eze making underlaps to help support Saka. So there's a few different ways you could use Eze in this midfield. It would get the best out of Rice as that 6 and that ball winner, but I'm really interested. Look, I think Arsenal would have bags of flair and creativity, and on the days it clicks, we'd probably look amazing. I just wonder if the balance is quite there with an Eze. Now, if we take Eze out of the team, I think you're then looking at Merino. And then you can get Arsenal into more of this shape, with Merino alongside Declan Rice, 6'1", 6'2" central midfielders behind Ødegaard. And of course, we know that when Arsenal have the ball and look to attack, you can get, Zinchenko in that shape, tucking in. If he's to start, maybe Calafiori, whoever it's going to be. If we sign Calafiori, you get Merino's underlaps there, you get his running into the box there, so you can add that to his game. But the other thing that we've noticed recently, mainly with Zinchenko coming out of the team, if we remove him, and let's bring Kivior in, because let's face it, he's had the shirt in that position up till now. When we've played with 4 centre-backs, it's actually been Kivior and White hugging the touchline, and we've played with a double pivot build-up. and a front four. So the box has been made. You all know this. We've talked about this a million times on this channel. Here we go. There we go. Your box is made up of Havertz, Merino, Rice. I don't know if you can see that, but there you go. Yeah, I'm having a mare with the tactical pad, but you get my point. You get that box midfield that we know that Arsenal have been using, mainly in 2024, and you've got a player like Merino that helps in build up there as well. So that is where I feel that there are differences in the way both would be used as midfielders. Merino feels like a really natural insert here, and everything will just tick the way it has been for the last few years. Perfect balance for that 8 position. But Eze feels like maybe the missing piece, that evolution that Arteta's tried a lot of times. It was against Norwich. Was it Norwich? I think it was Norwich when we really needed a win. It was Norwich, wasn't it? We really needed a win 2-3 seasons ago when Mikel Arteta lost the first 3 games. We lost the Etihad 5-0. Ramsdale made his debut, and we reverted to Partey, Smith Rowe, and Ødegaard as as 3 central midfielders together in that game. Do you remember that? You know, he went for that, and then we played it against Burnley, but then we ended up reverting to Xhaka in that game. We did it against Brighton, I think, when Tierney got injured. Xhaka moved to left back. We tried to play with Smith Rowe, Ødegaard, and Partey or Lokonga, can't remember who was in that midfield 3 as well. And he's just tried this a few times. He's tried to get 2 10s in that midfield or 2 advanced 8s in that midfield, but we've never quite had the balance right. Is that because it's not being coached right? Is that because it's... And look, the Centurions did it, right? Arteta was there. I'm sure he knows how to coach it. He's a brilliant coach. But is it to do with instruction? Is it to do with Smith Rowe not being good enough to do it? Is it something about the opposition now to stop it? I don't know what it is, but I don't think we've ever looked at that balance when we've played sort of 2 10s. Sometimes, actually, we've done it with Fabio Vieira. I think we did it at Goodison with Fabio Vieira, and to be fair, we looked quite balanced in that game. So there are examples of where Arsenal have been able to play with the 2 10s, and it's worked quite well. I'm just interested to see if that's what you do with Eze. With Merino, again, it feels like a more natural shift in here, 4-4-2 out of possession, and then move into the 5th lane and do what, via clips I've seen and the bits I've watched from Merino, feels like a really good fit in terms of being that 8, that box-to-box player that Arsenal might need and would complement Declan Rice, both in build-up and out of possession, really, really well. I've also got one more thing to add about all this, which is I just wonder whether this is going to be somewhat decided by the future of Thomas Partey. You might think, what do you mean by that? Well, Thomas Partey is a number 6 who has presence on midfield. And the minute you lose him, you've lost a 6'1" defensive midfielder that Mikel Arteta spent a lot of time working with to get him really ready for that position. Rice has been a 6, but he's also been an 8. If you lose Partey, do you sign Eze? Because you might think, well, what's the link there? Because Eze allows you to add the 8 and /10 that you want in that position, whilst also being a wide player, which we know that Arsenal are looking at, and therefore you can invest more in a defensive midfielder, an out-and-out 6, not an 8 like Merino, but an out-and-out 6. Do you get where I'm going with this? Basically, if you lost Partey, you probably want to add an Onana to get that right balance, that profile back in the squad. Therefore, if you really want Eze, you're probably thinking, well, we still want that 8 and that 10 and somebody who can do something a bit different in the final third, but Eze being able to play wide maybe is the best option. Do you get where I'm going with this? Then I wonder if Partey stays. We definitely don't need an out-and-out 6 because you've got Rice, Partey, Jorginho. You may as well add the 8, which is Merino, the central midfielder that combines everything. Mikel Arteta seems to have a squad of 6s and of 10s, but no real out-and-out central midfielders in the way he was when he was a player. So do you then go, okay, well, let's add him, and then the forward we add will be an out-and-out winger, not someone like Eze who plays wide but also in the 10. Do you get where I'm going with this? Maybe I've overcomplicated it, but I'd love to know your thoughts. Now, I'm going to, on the spot, I don't know the results of this, I'm going to get the results of the poll I did on socials, because I want to know what everyone thinks. So, who would you rather Arsenal sign? I put Eze and Merino, 72% of the votes. 1,800 votes, by the way. Thank you to everyone who voted. 72% of the votes for Eze, 28% for Merino. There we go. The Arsenal fans have spoken. I did ask some friends on various group chats as well, and some people have said, look, Eze is the player that I'd love to see at Arsenal, but Merino is the better balance. So I'd love to know your thoughts as well. If you want in focus deep dives into both these players, we can happily do that on the channel, of course. Now everyone go check out all the transfer dailies that Robbie's doing. Keep you up to date with all the latest transfer news. Talking transfers as well, if you missed that, was live. Go get all the latest because it's starting to re-pick up in the world of Arsenal. And if you like one wear, because a lot of people ask about this t-shirt when I wear it, North London Forever, go to the AFTV store. You can download the AFTV Plus app to do that, completely free to do, and you can get a hold of one of these. Many, many thanks. Catch you soon.